clock must be like 2 minutes behind the rest of you, I think.
It's just 6:01.
We decided to show up early just to make you feel bad.
That worked.
Well, we're here to talk about one topic only, is the superintendent's search. We all thanks everybody for sending it in. We all got in. We all got some good ideas. We probably want to dwindle it down so we can all be on one page, so they'll know exactly what we're looking for. Because they're going to go out to the public and find out what the public staff and employees are looking for and what the board is looking for in the superintendent.
So can I just, I saw the survey, I guess. Are we supposed to complete that too? Or are we just going through this process where we have our criteria that we're coming up with? Because there was a lot of stuff on that survey that I didn't even consider.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the survey is just for the public and staff.
Okay.
You can, if you want, complete it. It's, you know, you are a citizen of voting. You can, of the school district, you can fill out as a citizen.
Yeah, I'll have my husband do it if he wants to.
Yeah, you're a citizen.
Yeah.
The results of the survey will be compiled, and then you as a board will be able to look at those and see what the community is asking for in a superintendent. And, you know, that could inform your decisions, things to add or subtract from the qualifications and characteristics you're looking for.
Okay. Thanks.
I filled it out today. It takes not much time, you know, compared to some that, but it's got some really good attributes there that are listed.
Only one I think I would like to say is that most when successful teacher experience, I didn't realize that I should have put preferred, because you got and also having a superintendent has a superintendent certificate. You want to prefer, because it could be somebody out there that's a good superintendent but doesn't have the certificate. John Stanford, for a good idea, for the Seattle School District, he came out the military, and he was an excellent superintendent for Seattle. So we don't want to limit the people of saying you have to have a certificate, you have to be a principal in a school. It's preferred you do. We would love to see you to have those qualifications, but we don't want to limit the people going to apply for it.
I actually thought heavily about that specific superintendent while I was coming up with my list, because I remember wonderful things about John Stanford and the stuff that he did, and knowing that he wasn't an educator previously on all the wonderful things he did. But what made me put that I really wanted those attributes was the fact that we are a small school, and in a big school district like Seattle, there's a lot more support positions that would help him do the educational ticket items that he wouldn't have had that experience. There was other well-versed people that he could depend upon, several. So that's just my 2 cents and kind of my thought process. I just appreciated that you brought that up, because I immediately thought of him in the non-educator role as well.
I also weighed in on whether it would be required or not. And I thought that in a small district and with the supervising requirements, I thought it was really important to have had somebody that was a principal, because when we haven't had somebody that's been a principal, we've seen them not understanding those kinds of roles. And so I really valued that kind of experience.
I wanted, and it could be a combination of the criteria that I said I wanted, or someone who's planning to get those certifications. But one of my thoughts going into this is we are a small district, and sometimes certain candidates will look to smaller organizations or districts as a place to build their resume and then leave. And I don't want that kind of candidate. I also think that we deserve, and our staff and our teachers deserve, an experienced candidate. So I don't want somebody who's green and wants to use this as a learning experience only to leave again. I want to set that bar high, and I'm expecting experience, and I'm expecting credentials, and I'm expecting ongoing education and furthering of a demonstrated progression of their career. So that was my thought process by checking, yes, I want all this in a candidate. I don't want to settle for somebody.
Can I interrupt for a second?
Yeah.
I believe we should be announcing that we're recording this.
Thank you, George. I think, George, you should just be assigned that role. I think we should just say all meetings are recorded. And then we don't have to announce it each time, right?
We'll just add it to the last line of the pledge.
Okay, go ahead, Bonnie, go with your speech. This is being recorded.
Yes. Well, I do have a speech prepared, but so I will just read it and then you guys can provide me with feedback. How about that? So before we begin tonight's meeting, we wanted to make you all aware that we will be recording this meeting. We do plan, I'm going to have to put my glasses on here. We do plan to share this recording publicly in the event that a parent, staff, or community member would like to know what was discussed at tonight's meeting. If you do not wish to be recorded, please let me know at this time. Thank you, and I'll pause and thank you. And with that said, we will now begin the meeting. How does that sound?
The one question I have,
Yes.
if you do not wish to be recorded, if they say they don't wish to be recorded, does that mean when they speak, we're going to pause it, or we're not going to record the meeting?
No, and so then I have a part B here. In the event someone wishes to not be recorded, we will respond with, thank you for making us aware. It is at this time that we will ask you to turn off your video and microphone throughout the duration of the meeting, so you will be excluded from the recording.
Okay,
How's that?
good. I didn't want to get to a point where somebody says, I don't want to be recorded, and it throws the meeting off, because really, you don't want to be recorded, then don't come.
Right. All of our meetings in the boardroom, we typically have a sign that says this meeting is being recorded. And so we'll just verbalize it here. It's a great idea, George.
Good job, Bonnie.
Yeah, just put it under the pledge and then just have it there also in the agenda. So that'll kind of trigger me and say, oh, well, go ahead, Bonnie, say your spiel. Any comments, Lynn, on what we just discussed? Or?
No, the only thing I might say, I was wondering, could you put it on the notice of the meeting? When they look at board docs, it's there, it's stated clearly. So someone could do, as George said, maybe just not even show up, or else they could just know ahead of time, so people have a chance to think about it.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea to put it in the agenda or on the board docs, but I think we also, just to cover our butts, I think we have to
Say it.
announce it as well.
Yeah.
Okay,
Sounds good. Thank you.
let's get back to the criteria of the superintendent, so we can have something for the research forum to actually look at. And I would agree, as a small district, maybe we should put, they have to have that, because they're going to wear too many hats in a small district. And you're right, in the Seattle district, there are a lot of people. And you want to, I think we heard a lot of we've done the comments and went talk to citizens, even staff. They say, well, she didn't do this, or she was never a principal, and she don't know what it is all about. And I think that's great, because if you put out something that needs to be done, you can say, yeah, a principal can do this. You're just not hypothetically throwing it out there, saying it can be done because you have lived in the shoes of them. So that's a great idea. Any other comments? How you-
I have a question. Carrie, you put on about the National Board Superintendent qualifications. And I had one comment and one question, and that is, teachers that are NBCT certified, their stipend is paid for by the state. It doesn't cost the district anything. It's flow through money. But if you require a superintendent to have that particular certificate, I'm kind of inclined to think that you would be expected then to be giving them a stipend for it, and that would be district money. I mean, I could see providing that as a professional development opportunity, for someone who was a superintendent. I'm just thinking that if you make that a requirement, you might be expected to provide that stipend up front from the district's money. You're muted.
Yeah, that was what I had a question about, and I looked it up. But again, I put it on there for consideration. I don't know all the rules around it or how it's funded or if that's a normal requirement or not. This is my first rodeo selecting a new superintendent, so I don't know if that is a normal expectation or not.
It typically has not been a requirement because the program is so new. As Kathy mentioned, the state funds the national boards for teachers annually, and that program's been around since 2000, 1995 or something like that. So it's been around a long time. Then the superintendent's program is relatively new, and because it's new, it's not widely established. You have to apply just as you do for the teachers program, but they accept much fewer applicants, so it's harder to find superintendents who have it. So you could talk about it, but it could limit the number of candidates you get because the opportunity to engage in that process is limited.
Okay, so then let's take it off. I don't want to exclude good candidates by having a weird requirement.
Well, and the only thing I'd want to say is I think we need to be careful how many rock solid requirements we have compared to preferreds.
I agree, George.
I think it's a situation where it's okay to say we kind of hope for someone to come in who's independently wealthy and do it all for free too. But realism is we're probably not going to get the person that's been a superintendent for 10, 15 years. And I'm not even sure that this is the right district for that. I don't want to limit our applicant pool for people who may be close but not there.
So are you saying, which criteria are you suggesting?
Oh, no. I'm not saying, I would say I think we want to be careful about how many absolutely rock solid thou shalt have.
Yeah.
As opposed to, we'd kind of like you to have this or that. I would like to be cautious about how many we have. Personally, I don't care if you have a PhD or not.
Yeah.
Would I be comfortable with saying preferred PhD? Sure. I don't have a problem saying preferred. But if we find somebody who's an excellent candidate that doesn't have a PhD, but they're an excellent candidate, years of experience in administration, etc., as you said earlier, continual growth, progression throughout their career. I don't want to exclude them because they don't have a PhD.
Would you want to pay for them to get their PhD?
That's a separate negotiation.
Is it?
That would be, could be $50,000 to $60,000.
Yeah.
But again, that's a negotiation when it comes to salary.
Mhm.
Because the district, just because you hire someone doesn't mean you're required to pay for them to get a PhD. Conversely, if we hire somebody that has a PhD, more than likely, as we had with Marcy, as is in the current superintendent contract, there's a line where they get X number of additional dollars because they have a PhD.
Yeah, I think it's $5,000 if I recall, which is a lot less than.
Yeah, assuming we would negotiate to pay for someone's PhD, it would be less to pay somebody $5,000 who already have one.
Yeah.
But again, we're not obligated to pay for someone's
Yeah.
PhD.
I could go for a doctorate preferred, but again, I'm going to push for me. So I don't know how common is that my expectation is that a doctorate is very common in experienced superintendents. Am I wrong in that thinking?
It's become way more common than it was in the past. And so if you look around our area, about half and half.
That's what I was going to say, about half.
Right. But here's my question. What's their doctorate in?
Well, typically it's a doctorate in educational leadership would be what is typical.
Okay, so when we say a doctorate preferred, there's a specific doctorate we're looking for.
Yeah.
Well, we some districts have hired attorneys who their JD is a doctorate.
That's true.
It just depends on, again, what you're looking for. And there could be somebody you'll find who could be in the process of getting their PhD. Preferred allows you to look at a broader group than required. And again, if somebody's in the process of getting one, depending on what you negotiate with a contract is whether or not at the completion of that, would there be a stipend awarded either at that time or the following year. As George knows from writing contracts, there's a lot of little different things you can add on or take away.
Okay. So if we said doctorate preferred, would that be good for everybody? So not required, and it can be in the process of.
I would like preferred. That way you wouldn't limit yourself to certain candidates. Because like I said, you could have a good candidate that's working on a doctorate, or a good candidate doesn't have a doctorate. Or, you could, and then when you say doctorate, what you got to specify. Like you say, that one guy was a lawyer. He has a doctorate. He's a doctor, but is it an education? No, he's an attorney.
Well, so then what about this superintendent certificate? I'm sorry. Preferred or required superintendent certificate.
So isn't that what, Lynn, weren't you saying that program is relatively new?
Well, that's the National Board Program.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Us in Washington State does not require a superintendent to have their credential. The benefit of the credential is that it looks at all the standards from community engagement to board relations to finance. So it gives a wide overview of all the areas that a superintendent has to engage in. However, if you get an experienced superintendent who has done that work without a credential, they'll be experienced, and you will know by their body of work, you will know by the references and the checking you do. Most serious candidates who apply for the job will have their credential.
So you think we should go preferred?
I don't
So,
think,
Here's my question on that. Sorry, somebody else can go first.
Go ahead, Judge.
And I'm going to be kind of contrarian about this. Believe it or not, I can be contrarian.
no.
Yeah. And I appreciate sarcasm.
I'm sorry.
You would have to, being contrarian.
Was Marcy certified?
Yes.
Yes.
So certified isn't the end all.
No, Marcy received both her superintendent credential and PhD, I believe, through the University of Washington in a joint program where you could get both. So it isn't, it's not a guarantee of quality of candidate.
What I was thinking was perhaps we put doctorate or superintendent certificate preferred. That was just a thought. So that they had some kind of educational background in being a superintendent.
You can request, if you decide that you want an experienced superintendent, rather someone who has just completed their credential, you can say, whatever, 3 to 5 years, either required or preferred as a district superintendent.
I don't have a problem with having somebody that was an assistant superintendent and not a superintendent before, because that's still a lot of experience. We're a smaller district, but I want to make sure that they have the background knowledge either through the doctorate of education like you were talking about, or through the certification program, being an upper level administrator in a district.
I'm having a little personal challenge a little bit with automatically thinking that because somebody has a doctorate or the certification that they're going to be able to come in and do the job. I feel like there's a whole lot more that's going to make a successful candidate for Orting other than those certification papers. Somebody can go to school for years and years and years and still not be able to work well with people effectively. And I know we'd be able to get those hopefully weeded out in the interview process.
I like the statement of, I like putting the expectation out there that we would prefer certification and prefer a doctorate or equivalent experience. Going back to Stanley's point and your point about the Seattle superintendent having that strong military background. What about something like that? Would that?
I like the adding of the equivalent experience.
Okay.
Yeah.
I also like that because my fear isn't that we won't get enough candidates that meet all the qualifications that we put out. My fear is some candidates may read qualifications and say, well, clearly they're looking only for somebody who's already doing the job. And we might miss out on some good applicants who are waiting in the wings to assume that kind of role.
And you won't limit yourself.
Yeah, but here's the other thing is, again, I want an experienced candidate. I mean, you're not hiring for today. You're hiring for the next 10, 15, 20 years, hopefully, a superintendent that stays with us that long, and a district that's going to have monumental shifts between now and then. And so, again, I don't want to say we're a small district. we need an experienced, qualified candidate, not somebody who we're going to have to train how to do their job. Remember, we're the boss.
I can agree with what you're saying. The one thing where I would say we might have a little more issue is I don't think we're at a position where it's going to be well received to pay someone $200,000 a year again. And if you're looking for someone with 5 years experience as a superintendent, PhD, certified national board, every one of those
Yeah.
is a pay. So we're not, if we come back and offer looking at what districts roughly our size are paying their superintendents, somewhere in the 185 range, are we going to get the most highly qualified superintendent candidate for $185,000? I don't think so. I think they're going to say, well, I can get more money elsewhere. But again, that's just me.
I don't know. We could go with it and adjust it if we don't have a big enough candidate pool, or if we don't find somebody we like.
Oh, I think we
Like
can
Russian
definitely look
roulette.
them all as preferred.
I didn't go with preferred. You said,
Yeah.
George?
What I'm just saying, if we're holding out for somebody who absolutely, like, you're looking for a highly experienced, well, we have to understand highly experienced.
I'm saying, 3 to 5, maybe 10 years. I'm not talking about like a veteran who's been doing this for 20 years, but I am talking like 3 to 5 years experience as an assistant soup or as a superintendent. So that was what I was going to say. Melissa, you added something and I didn't catch what you said.
Oh, no, sorry. I thought you had mentioned we can always change the criteria if we don't get good candidates. I would rather, I shy away from that action. I would rather put it all out there at the beginning rather than kind of going back afterward. I'd rather make sure that we're all perfectly comfortable with what we're doing, and instead of trying to reduce the qualifications later.
Yeah, that wouldn't be a good thing on our behalf to go back and redo it. Then your pool would dwindle real fast.
So, if we were going to interview each candidate individually ourselves, if we were going to review them ourselves, I would agree with you wholeheartedly, Carrie. Let's not get a pool of 400 applicants that we have to look through. But thankfully, we're paying somebody else to do it.
Yeah.
So they're going to look at the applicant pool and they're going to say, well, this is the best of who's applied. And they're going to show them to us and we're going to say, hey, yeah, they look good. They don't look good. We want to see more. They're going to be the front door to it. But they're also going to, I assume, do a little quality control and say, okay, well, these are your top tier. These are the other, and these people are in the wings waiting to gain the experience. So we should be able to work with our search crew to thin our crop before we have to start evaluating individual applicants.
Excuse me.
Bless you. We realize they're going to take our qualification that we're looking for. They're going to go out and search for the superintendent. They're going to come back that matches what we want and say, here's what we got. Here's the 5 people, 3 people. We tell them, okay, I want the top 5 candidates that matches what we're looking for, what the community's looking for, what the staff is looking for. Then they're going to pick the top 5 that come closest to what we are looking for and say, here you go. Interview. These are the 5 that come closest to your criteria.
Can we I feel really unorganized right now. I feel like we're kind of talking all around. We have this really great chart full of things that based on all of our criteria. Can we just maybe like go down the list and
Sure.
and maybe decide if we're trying to get this down to 1 page, maybe 1.5 at the most, to be able to provide the search team, right? That we can that we can just kind of do that line by line based on our criteria?
We can do that.
I like that because there were a couple of them that other people put on there that I actually added an X to as I was reading it.
Yeah, there was stuff that I hadn't thought of. I'm like, oh, good idea.
That's
I
why
wish-
when I prepared the chart, I thought it might be easier for you to see, who was kind of in that same ballpark. So we can add or take away X's easily.
Okay,
I think that, yeah.
what did we decide on?
Let's start off with the first one then. Successful teacher experience. Preferred.
I think that's a must. That's just me.
You think that's a what, Melissa?
I think that's a must.
What if they were like a counselor or because I think Chris Willis, wasn't he a psychologist or a counselor or something, not a teacher, So, I mean,
I think you have to have been in a classroom. I mean, part of their role is to evaluate and observe, and I think you have to have had kids.
I would put like preferred because you're going to limit yourself to, like, say, you're going to have a good candidate that has not a teacher, but has the direction to. That's why you have your executive staff to do that and get you up to speed.
Yeah. That's a good point. You can move up the channels through another track.
that's what I'm saying. You could have been a counselor, you could have been a psychologist, speech therapist.
A lawyer.
A teacher to know what the decisions you're making, the choices you're making, your leadership team direction, to know the impact that it's going to have on what are truly your frontline workers. The teachers are truly your first line of defense. So I think it's important for them to be aware of that. I'm just not sure that requires significant classroom experience. If you've been a principal for 10 years, you probably have a pretty good idea of what's going to impact your teachers. But that's just my thought.
One way I've seen it is public education experience preferred, which means you could be a counselor, you could be a principal, you could have been a teacher.
I have to say, I'm willing. I don't like required very much, but on that one, with the way you worded that, Lynn,
Yeah.
I'm really comfortable with required.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah,
Me too.
I agree.
Yeah.
Public education experience.
Required.
Yeah, required. Because then they could have come up through any track.
And you are all in agreement with that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, at least 3 people are.
Good.
Do I count you in, George?
Oh yeah, I'm definitely in agreement with
Okay,
that.
I just want to make sure you were one of the 3.
Hey, even if I get outvoted on one, I don't take offense by it, so there's no issue with that.
Well, the next one is master's degree. Do you want it to say
Yes.
preferred?
Yes.
Do you have to give a degree or what?
If you're putting down that they need to have been an administrator, they have their master's.
They have to have their
Yeah.
master's.
Yeah.
So that's it.
Okay.
But that's
That's
again.
redundant.
So we'll take that out then. They have to. They already have to have it. We don't have to repeat it.
So just to clarify, anybody who has been a principal or been in district administration in a leadership position would have a master's degree.
Would have a master's degree.
Okay.
They may not have an administrative credential, though. A building principal would, but a central office person would have to have a master's, but they may not have a principal certification. They could have an administrative central office certification. So
Oh, well, I like the administrative credential,
Yeah.
the principal credential.
Well, but if we're going to put if we're going to put emphasis on principal experience anyway, we already
It's a
covered.
given. It's a
Okay,
given.
yep.
So
Okay.
now we're 2 for 2 required, right?
And the next one will be on the principal and building administration experience.
I would be comfortable with required on this one again.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thinking about what our community needs and expects right now, I think we need somebody who's been in the buildings.
yep, I agree.
And that's 5 all.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to vote against one just to be a jerk.
George, I haven't eaten dinner yet, man. Come on.
I'm the one taking notes, so please be kind.
And the next one is experience recruiting, attention, and retaining high staff skills. Well, I read that wrong, but basically,
Could we, so I thought, Stanley, that was a great one that you added, and I had one that kind of fits in that same category. Maybe we could consolidate them.
Okay.
Maybe experience recruiting, attracting, and retaining highly skilled staff. I had one in there about like developing, where to go? I'm looking.
Can I ask a question while you look?
Oh,
How is,
Track-
it,
go ahead, George.
how is this measured?
Can this perhaps be like, I don't know.
So what
I
we
just don't know how
Terry?
we can ask them, hey, do you have experience doing that? But how do we measure?
Yeah, I would love to hear them tell me examples of how maybe they expanded a grade level classroom, or they implemented a program, and how they recruited and attracted and trained employees, what did they do to keep teachers within their district, or staff in the office, like have them explain those kinds of.
so
So
there's
that's-
2 ways to get at this. You can say demonstrated experience recruiting, attracting, and retaining highly skilled employees or staff. So they would have to speak to that in their application, or you assume that anyone who is an experienced superintendent principal has had that experience, and you go to Carrie's approach and you ask them that question in a interview and get at it, have them talk about it specifically. So you can make it either a requirement, you can assume that someone who has done that work has done it, and then you ask them to expand on it during the interview process. So it becomes a question.
I
I'm
think
good with however we do this one.
yeah.
I don't see that this one would be anything that would, even if we made it required, I don't think that it would limit any applicants, because I don't think anyone's going to answer, no, I can't recruit good people. I really suck at recruiting.
But the other thing that these questions do is they set an expectation, and they're going to have to speak to this in their interview or on their resume in some fashion. And so, yeah, it's not going to weed anybody out, but it is going to establish this as one of the priorities of our district.
Yep.
They will probably address it in their letter as a qualification. They would address that in the letter of application to the board if
Yeah.
it's stated.
I'm good with that one.
Lynn, the one that I put, it's at the bottom of page 1. It starts out with track record of leading and developing cabinet team members and principals. Kind of gets at that same category. So if you strike,
Just do the first one. It's more broad.
yeah, that's what I was saying, is just pulled out. So it starts out a track record of leading and developing cabinet team members and principals. I want them to be able to demonstrate how professional development was a priority and how they, supported their team from going from, one level to the next level. I want to hear examples of that. How they did it. Right,
Could we perhaps, in that experience recruiting, attracting, and retaining, could we add experience recruiting, attracting, developing, and retaining?
Yep.
That
Yeah.
development in
Yeah.
there.
And are we good with making that a requirement?
It doesn't have to be a requirement. It's just a criteria that we'll be considering.
So I'm going to add developing to experience recruiting, attracting, developing, and retaining. Is that correct?
Yeah, but I think it has to be a requirement, Carrie, because to be honest, if anybody would say, well, I really am not a good recruiter, I don't develop people well. I mean, that's not a preferred one. If they were going to be honest and say that, then we wouldn't even consider it.
Yeah, I was just saying we don't have to flag it as like, there's always like, minimum qualifications and then other criteria.
Yeah.
So imagining this would be part of the other criteria. Like you're not even going to be in the game if you're not an educator. Like if you're not an educator, you're not in the game. Once you're in the game, then I want to look for this.
Okay.
So is that required or preferred?
So just as a question, instead of saying required and preferred, do we want to label them minimum qualifications and other criteria?
Even with min quals and other criteria, you can determine if it's preferred or required, and not all qualifications have required or preferred. It's just those ones that are just your rock bottom. This is my line. I want to see it.
I mean, because I was going to say, if it's on there, obviously we prefer it.
Thank you. Yeah. Agreed. If we can like consolidate our list and go through them, and then maybe we could go back through and say.
And I can certainly wordsmith it and get it to you, on those that we don't quite have perfect yet. I can wordsmith it.
Well, and if we know which ones we want, like Melissa just did and Carrie did on that very one, where Carrie said we could probably consolidate these two, and then Melissa said we could just add the word development right onto that one. There may be a way, once we know where we are with all these, where Lynn can go through and say, okay, these two questions are very closely related. How can I make them one? Or these two requirements, how can I make them one? And then just make it at whatever the highest level of the two were. So if one was required and one was preferred, you just make it required.
And we shouldn't have to write this from scratch. Like, my guess is 90% of the superintendent job postings have the same things in them.
We just need to put walks on water, and then we have it complete.
We
Okay.
should put one requirement as preferred that is just out there.
Right.
Must be able to weave, something.
Oh Lord, I can see the applicants now.
Right?
They're all wearing white jackets.
Clothes that you made yourself for first interview.
We made it to the fourth one. So the fifth one.
Promote high standard of integrity and personal performance with able to develop and communicate a verbal quality education from the board, staff, and community. I thought we had a lot of that on the discussions that they didn't understand where we were going, what was the track.
Yeah.
I think that's why I put that. You got to be able to communicate, especially to the community. The communication.
I also put one about communication. To me, communication is a requirement.
So
go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I was just going to say that really sounded like the whole ACT thing that we have that started here with Tony. And I did see that specifically on the sheet.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to do this to you, but I want to go back to experience, recruiting, attracting. Did we get preferred, required, or just as?
I think we got preferred on that one.
I just stated.
Yeah, just state
Just stated. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right. And we're all in.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
And the next two could be combined because experience organizing, citizen communication, leaders,
No.
staff, and us.
No, I see those as different and really important.
I added an X to the experience, ongoing citizen, organizing citizen communities, leading staff. I added an X to that because, yeah, we need somebody who's really good at bringing the community in, especially.
And bond and levy measures. We're facing both of those.
Oh,
And
shit, coming up pretty quick. Yeah.
once again, I don't want a rookie leading us through that. we need a baller. So yeah, I see those as both
Yeah,
important.
we definitely need somebody who can connect to the community.
Yep. And I think
That's
that
all we heard.
working with culturally sensitive and ethnically diverse communities, I think that's important too.
Well, we could put that in. That's another part of the community.
Yeah, but those three right there are going to, when you look at, I want to learn that from the candidates. I
Okay.
want to learn about their experience in those three categories. If we lump them all together, we're going to get a bunch of blah, blah, blah. I know what they're doing.
So when you leave them individually, and
Yeah.
how you going to rank them? Preferred?
Let's not rank yet.
Okay.
Just get through the list and then we can.
Okay. Doctor requirement. I think that should be a requirement, or do you want to just
Preferred.
I think we
Preferred.
agreed on preferred.
Yeah.
I could go with preferred. And the superintendent certification,
certification,
preferred,
national board certification?
we're eliminating.
Okay. Assistant superintendent experience required. I think we should eliminate that.
No,
No, I think that needs to be a preferred.
I think it needs to be a requirement. Again, like you guys, I don't want. Am I the only one who doesn't want a rookie? I mean, I've had to develop people. I've had to
I
develop
want to
people.
look at a bunch of candidates. I don't. Do I think we can only find a good candidate who's either currently a superintendent or assistant superintendent? I don't think that we would be.
You're not selling our district. Remember, this job posting also has to sell our district. And I am so passionate, you guys, that our staff and our teachers deserve an experienced candidate. And I'm not talking like a 20-year veteran. I'm talking 3 to 5 years. I want them to have done this job for somebody for a little while and gained that perspective and experience. We're not a right out of the gate kind of district.
There are a couple of people that I can think of that have been assistant superintendents with a lot of experience in education that I would be more than happy to have them.
Well, and it says that. It says
Well,
superintendent experience.
And Kathy, just as a question. One of the persons that I've heard from the public that they would love to see this kind of person come in. I don't know if he's ever been an assistant superintendent, but that's Ed.
He was an assistant superintendent for a short while here.
No, he was not. He was executive director. He was not an assistant superintendent.
See, and I think that's where we get the mix-ups with titles, because some of the roles that are played at central offices around districts can be an assistant superintendent role without having that title.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. Like your director of teaching and learning, for instance, to me, that title fits in as an assistant sup almost in a larger district. They're not going to have that title.
Okay, so yeah, you're right about Ed. Now that I'm thinking about it, so but when we needed an acting superintendent, he was the acting. So
He was superintendent designee.
Yes, that's
Right.
okay. Thank you for the exact title. Couldn't think of it. Yeah.
But he still didn't hold the title of assistant superintendent.
No.
So one way you can think about it is
Okay.
central office experience required, preferred. So depending, they're going to, on their resume, are going to say, I'm the director of this and that, and they're going to tell you what their duties are, or I'm the executive director, I'm the chief officer, or I'm whatever. And so you're right, Melissa, that titles can be really tricky.
Mhm.
And people have taken way more creative license in recent years than the typical deputy superintendent, assistant superintendent. And so I think if you talk about central office, you're getting to what Carrie is talking about, of making sure that someone has that experience.
So central
that they bring
office
to the table.
leadership experience.
Central, yes, we don't want the custodian the central office too.
No, I think we need to say something besides district office.
Okay. Well, you could,
Like even if we
school district administration, is that?
Why don't you
Or-
take office out and just call it a director?
Or
Yeah.
you can talk about executive administrative experience.
That's a good one.
So I think you can wordsmith it to fix it, because I mean, like, if you had somebody that was a fantastic special ed director in some place for 15 years, you know, they definitely had a lot of administrative experience, you know. So I wouldn't want to, I like the way Lynn is expanding the term, because you're right, the terms go all over the place.
If we're going to put something like Lynn said, I'm okay with it being required.
Yes.
If we're going to say assistant superintendent, I want it preferred.
I agree, George.
I do not, but I am outnumbered, I think.
Well, we can also think, since we're trying to get through the list, we can also put some more thought into it and
Right.
have a really good brainstorm come from somebody so we can fix that one.
Okay.
And I've got it color coded, so I know that that's something we want to look at.
Project manager experience in school construction.
That was pretty detailed. That's not, we don't have to keep that. I was just thinking of what's ahead and what we're gonna need, and that one,
And usually you have somebody else that's the project manager.
Yeah.
That used to work
Yeah.
with the buildings we've had. here.
unless you're in a small district like me.
No, we had a project manager for PTR, for OMS.
We had one too. It was an assistant soup and we didn't fill that position.
Well, and the bond measure usually allows you to pay for that project manager through bond dollars. So it's not an added admin position out of the district budget. It's out of the bond budget.
So you,
Allowable
what you're saying
expense.
is that you could actually hire a contract position to manage that out of bond funds? It wouldn't have to
Mhm.
be, oh, okay.
Yeah, was our, like, look at the mega portable and all that responsibility ended up on Marcy's shoulders, and that was not her jam.
Construction management is
I thought Debbie Christensen was,
Yeah.
Yes, you did it with Debbie Christensen. Yeah.
Or either one of them that was not their jam. So it went to Marcy, and Marcy had a difficult time supporting Debbie, and it wasn't Debbie's thing either. So
Okay, well, when it was PTR, it was Greg Reel. When it was OMS, it was Greg Reel. And I don't know who was the project manager for the stadium and addition to OHS. But each time we had a project manager that, like Lynn was saying, was paid out of the bond. And some of those people were people that had been here at the district, like, say, running building maintenance. Anyways, so we did have separate project managers for the actual building of a school.
It's
I
that
remember that.
liaison with the contractor who ensures that the vision that the board has and the community, because usually they've got a community group that comes together to talk about what that school is going to be like, both physically and environmentally. So, you know, a project manager doesn't necessarily have to have they need to experience in construction management as opposed to being a building
So we can,
administrator.
We're just striking this one. Is that
Yeah.
what I heard you say? Okay.
because when we talk about bond experience, and then we can go down the path of, you know, what you do with the money and how'd that go. And that kind of,
And that's actually kind of fun.
Yeah. Here's a professional development with a comment on the ongoing education, peers network, and ensuring and communication.
that doesn't need to be a separate thing. That's just something that is super important to me that I'll be looking for in a minute. I just want that professional and educational experience.
What about strong core communication and collaboration?
Sorry, just you know, I want somebody who is connected to ESD, other local districts, on task force, part of the state. Just somebody who's connected outside of their little world and is going to be able to bring ideas in. So I'm looking for that too.
Well, those things are going to show up on their resume.
Yeah, it should. Yep.
And that'd be a good question. You could also, like I said, once you see the resume, you can bring it up, what experience you have in those things and blah, blah, blah. And then that'd be a good interview question when you interview and asking the question.
Yeah.
So can I ask you just real quick, Carrie, when you talk about that stuff, because I'm listening to you and I'm absorbing, what does that look like if we have a candidate that's coming from out of state? Because those connections that they would have would be for their local area.
Yeah, totally fine. Yeah, totally fine. As long as they have shown how, like some people get in their role and they'll just stay in the local world. And I really want a candidate who is very comfortable and well-versed in connecting. And those skills are going to be important when they go to the legislator and when they participate on task force and they talk to other districts and we get together with Pierce County. Remember when we got together with the other Pierce County superintendents? I want somebody who can be aggressive in going after those opportunities to learn how others do it. So if they've done that kind of stuff in their own state across the country, that's just as good as doing it locally.
Okay, I was just having a little trouble visualizing. Sorry.
Yeah. I'm looking for, like, are they an introvert or an extrovert? Are they going to go out and seek opportunities to learn from others, or are they going to hunt down and ordering? Because we other areas, we're starved for educational experience and creative think tanks here in our little town. You know, there's not a community of 50 people that they can go out to and get ideas from, you know, that are in industry for them.
The next one we're going to skip because nobody have anything on that one. Budget management.
Did you hold on?
Just assign a preferred or required on that? I'd be most comfortable with preferred on it, but I think Carrie's in the required.
I'm sorry, which one are you talking about?
I thought it was kind of one of those things that we're going to be kind of delved into deeper on the resume, whatever letters we get.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we're not going to
It's
list
not going to be-
that's something we're going to evaluate on, not something we're going to request on. I thought we wanted to request on it, Carrie.
So are you talking about the communication?
Yeah, the collaboration with ESDs, etc.
Oh, I see. Okay.
That history, professional development.
Yep.
So when I approached this, I was looking at minimum qualifications. They've got to be, you know, education has to be there and all that kind of stuff. And then I was looking for like other criteria that I'm going to be looking for.
Okay.
So
we want this in the job description.
Yeah, like
as required or preferred.
asking. I just want it stated. I'm hung up on this required and preferred stuff. I want some of these things listed as criteria we're looking for, and then they speak to it and answer it. Like, I don't want to, when you start getting to required and preferred, it says, when you say preferred, it says this is not as important as the things being required. I just want them like other qualifications, bang, 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 bang. Because it's all important. Like, it's
So-
all,
Are we going to put required or preferred on any of them? Because I think the first 3 or 4 we actually did say required.
But those are things that are like certifications,
Yeah.
degrees, and things like that. So those are paperwork necessities.
right.
Okay.
That says I have a driver's license or I
That's a
don't.
rabbit?
And the other things are
Is that a real rabbit?
characteristics we want.
You guys have documents?
No. It's a big
Well,
bunny.
you know, if you're it's still talking about professional, you can talk about commitment to ongoing education, peer networking, and you've already dealt with engagement in communities,
Yeah.
committees. So if you want to talk about that commitment piece, which is they're going to have to demonstrate that to you. If they're a smart candidate, they're going to look at what qualifications you're listing, and they're going to find a way to address that, not just by saying, oh, I am really committed, but saying, I can demonstrate my commitment through this, this, and this.
Yeah. And it could be something like just participation in, you know, yeah, just go with it. I don't need to wordsmith it.
I think that should be one of the things that's listed. Yeah, I think that's real important because we're going to want them to be broader than just ordering.
Yes. Thank you, Kathy. Yeah.
I'm
So you
comfortable
want
with that being listed.
Okay.
And so we're just going to see that as a listed item that's going to say commitment to ongoing education and
Yeah.
peer networking. Okay,
And-
something along those lines.
Yeah. And Lynn, you're going to like wordsmith this into a real job
Yeah.
description qualifications,
Yeah.
right?
And then you're going to edit it highly so that.
Okay.
So
I'm sure there's a template for this stuff, and some of our
Yeah.
ideas are not new. So
yeah, yes, I will do that.
cool. And
So which one we left off for the budget management?
Well, did you want the strong bias toward communication and collaboration?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, back up. Missed one.
So,
yes, that should be in there.
So one way of stating that is demonstrated effective written and verbal communication skills with a variety of stakeholders.
Beautiful.
Great.
That'll
Yes, that quote.
Yeah,
got it.
that's like obvious.
Yeah.
Oh, the ones that track leading, and go ahead.
No, I'm listening.
Development cabinet team members and principals. That's just a given because if you're gonna, that's something that's part of the job description.
That's
Be
the
able
one
to-
we added developed to the other one somewhere
Yeah.
else.
Did you back
Yeah.
up, Stanley?
What's that?
Did you back up?
Go ahead. Which one are you talking about?
The,
I don't
the
know, I
track
don't-
record, the track record one.
Okay, that's what we're on now.
That one we eliminated that one.
Yeah, we just took development and added that to one of the other ones up top.
Okay, I got you. Now we're on the same. Go ahead.
On the strong bias toward communication and collaboration, there's got to be something out there that says not just I'm good at written and verbal communication. That to me doesn't matter what position I'm hiring for. I'm looking for that qualification.
Yeah.
So unique about a superintendent role. How could we frame that in a way that really gets them to answer that question?
I have a comment here for me. Tweak this. So
Yeah, something that's like
that just doesn't look like a placeholder, that actually says this is something we really value.
Yeah, and communication levels at the level of a superintendent. Like, I don't know, like the public communication perspective, the ability to represent us in media, dealing with different stakeholders, the ability to handle very sensitive and confidential information, like some of that communication stuff that you only get at the level of a superintendent.
Get some ideas here.
We good?
Yeah, well, I'm going to need to
Yeah.
tweak that and work on it, but I think I've got the idea.
Cool.
Next is budget management. It's not part of that job description, though. Got to do budgets.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that superintendents get fired for if they don't have a
Yeah,
good
that's
budget.
part of it. Yeah.
Right. And we have a good budget. I don't want to get it wrecked. So
That's part of the evaluation on them is the
Well,
budget.
you would be surprised at the number of people in fairly high level school district positions who don't understand how to build a budget, how to manage and track a budget, and they end up relying solely on their budget manager, their budget director, or and so I think mentioning something, letting them, the candidate understand that it is an expectation of this board that you're going to have someone who doesn't just delegate budget management, but understands budget management.
yeah,
I like
say that.
expanding it to like a district or not district, but school operations and financial management experience, etc. Something that says even beyond just budget, there are things you have to understand about the management of a district.
Yep.
Yeah, that's okay. I'll need to tweak that, but I think that's good. I like that.
And the next one would be the big one. Are they going to be residents of Orting?
Not required.
Not required. I'm a George. It's not required because you got a lot of factors. It's preferred, but not required, because if somebody just bought a home and they can't move,
Yeah.
you're limited to your situation, and you put them in a situation. Are you going to purchase my home so I can move to Orting?
Yeah.
Can we perhaps add, because I agree also that it shouldn't be required, but can we put something in there that something about visibility, high visibility?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I have that
That's
on
a good
my
one.
list.
That's a good one.
I said, but high visibility.
We can deal with that one in the interview, right? Because if we choose someone and say, okay, we're going to interview these people, and this person's indicating they're not going to live in Orting, we set the expectations at that point. Well, we expect that you're going to be seen quite a bit in Orting.
In the survey, there is a question regarding that high visibility in the schools, and then another one that says high visibility in the community, and of course it's ranked. The other thing you can do is not that different than a qualification, but expectations, and you would want to be clear as the candidates are selected that beforehand, some of these things that are really important to the board aren't just a qualification, but you expect to see that not only in a candidate, but once that superintendent is hired, you will expect to see that as part of their everyday work.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it'll be interesting because I'm assuming that most of the community and stakeholders are going to say visibility is really important. I'd be really surprised if they didn't say it was extremely important.
Yeah.
I'd be really surprised if anything on that survey wasn't extremely important. And I was like, extremely, extremely, extremely.
I was doing the same thing. I'm like, I'm no help at all.
Yeah. Which thing would I be willing to sacrifice? None.
Any
That's
more
why they
comments?
walk on water.
Any more comments on the superintendent criteria? I got a board comment. Basically, since we got some idea where we're going on this, we need to, and it's not going to happen tonight. We need to think about salary. How much you expect to pay for the superintendent with all this experience, all these things you're looking for.
Yeah.
The board came out to, I think Carrie was the only one here, myself. We looked at, okay, we're going to pay the superintendent mid-range. We're not going to be the lower. We don't want to be the lowest, and we don't want to be the highest. We want to stay in the mid-range. Would you like Lynn to put together base salary on the mid-range of a superintendent in our district, our district size?
Well, but we got a list of surrounding superintendents' salaries. We got a list of
Oh,
them.
okay, that's right.
And it
Well-
listed the size of the district, so it gave you the ability to do a pretty good like-to-like comparison.
Can I ask a couple clarifying questions? One, are you guys, so for me, when I was looking at salary and I look at the responsibilities of a superintendent, there are 10 or 20 schools, the responsibilities remain constant. They have to abide by the law. They have to manage the systems in place to make sure we're compliant. They have to support students, whether there's 2,600 or 26,000. So for me, like, the job doesn't get smaller because you have fewer buildings.
I don't agree. The basic personnel management function argues that, because the superintendent accountable to, and needs to be available to our staff. You're looking at a situation where, is it harder to manage 4 schools, or is it as hard to manage 4 schools as it is to manage 20? I would argue it is not.
And I think there's some economies of scale that take effect. You're still required to lead a cabinet of leaders, and you have a cabinet of leaders who then lead administration. Like, it's like when you scale up a company, like, I can add 100 workers with the same management structure.
But as soon as you add 101, you have a problem. Economies of scale are real, but they're stair-step. They're not linear.
True. That is true. That was one question. I don't know if anybody else has an opinion on that. But the other question I have is, we already have a history of paying a superintendent at a certain level. If I were a job candidate looking at our district and I came in at, okay, we're going to offer you $150,000 instead of what we were paying, does that send a signal? What am I trying to say?
So what is the signal we send when we are at the high end compared to the surrounding districts, including districts that are bigger than us?
Because Marcy was not at the mid-range. There were like 3 people higher than her.
She was at, I believe, because I looked at this, I believe she was at the mid-range in terms of her base salary, where she made a lot of money, was in the cash out, the supplemental days, the extra stuff,
Right.
That's the stuff we got to look at.
the perks
Yeah.
as they're typically
Mary,
called.
I want to share why I'm pretty firm with, I don't want to be at 200,000 plus. Primary reason is the people.
So, I wasn't advocating for us to be at that. I was just asking the question of what happens when a district drops their superintendent compensation.
Yeah,
That was, in
that's
our,
something we will have to manage if we do that.
But
we're
here's
gonna have to
something,
answer that question.
One at a
I'm not-
time. Hold on.
here's something, oh, sorry. I thought you were through, Carrie.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead, Kathy.
Well, here's something else. What you're talking about is her salary at the end, not her salary at the beginning. And
Yeah.
we're talking about the beginning salary.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I don't necessarily agree that we have to worry so much if that base salary takes a tick down. I do kind of want to, one of the things that came up right as I was coming on as a board member was the idea of compression.
Of
And
what?
compression, like salary
Yes.
compressing on one another. So if our superintendent, you can't, some people might disagree with me, and that's fine. But the way it was explained to me was that if your superintendent, they have to be paid more than their highest paid subordinate, typically. And so that was just kind of something I was curious about as to when we start talking about salary, is
Yeah.
calculating and taking those factors into consideration as well.
Yeah.
We also look at what is the high, oh, I'm sorry, excuse me.
Go, Judge.
Most people aren't going to work for less than the people that are working for them. I mean, generally speaking, if I'm in charge, my head's on the block, there should be a salary commensurate with that. Now, I have hired someone to work for me that made more money than me, but I really wanted that person and they made me look good. So it worked for me. But that's not something we're going to bring somebody in doing. And I don't know what the second highest paid person in the district makes.
I don't either. So I think that when we get to that part where we're starting to look at the base salary and all that stuff, that would be helpful to know from Lynn.
I think that we want to know what the highest paid teacher makes and then what those levels are, because compression is an issue. For instance, when the teachers got their new salary schedule 3 years ago, they were making more money than the assistant principals, and assistant principals were working 260 and teachers were working 184. So, that is a real issue. And so we look not only at salary, but we look at the number of days they work. So sometimes looking at a per diem and then multiplying that out is a way to look at when we look at salary compression.
And I thought, if I'm remembering, and maybe Stanley, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought there was like a 5% bump in base salary, like for each level. So like, your most senior teachers paid at this level, and assistant principals and principals paid, executive directors in that mix too. Then you have superintendent, which is a percentage above. So I would not want to top, and Melissa, I'm so grateful you brought that up. I would not want to disrupt that and bring in a superintendent who discovers they're making less than their own team.
But if you remember, the reason we did that as a board, we want to bring them up to mid-level because they was at the bottom.
Yeah,
so
and
we didn't want to we brought them up, and some of them took a hell of an increase, and some of them was making more, the teachers, and were making more than the principals and stuff. So we had to bring the principals up to get them equally or higher than some of the staff.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying, but also just as a statement, if you got a teacher that's been working for 35 years, I wouldn't be alarmed by a vice principal or a principal who's got 5 years in making less money than them. I wouldn't be alarmed by that. So I don't see it as a cross-level compression issue.
Come to me. Don't get in those.
I think you have to be really careful how you address it, because one of the principals in our building turned to me. It was her very first year being a principal. never been a principal before. I was national board certified. Was at the top of the credit scale. I was at the top of the year scale. And she turned to me and she said, you know, you make more per diem than I do. And I thought, well, I'm at the end of my profession and I've been doing this and I've done everything I could to get myself there. And this is your first year. And I thought,
I don't want somebody who's so egotistically stuck on a salary. And I look at that when I say a teacher makes more than a vice principal. Okay. So what? What's the specific? Tell me about that teacher. Tell me about that vice principal.
Hey, Melissa,
Regardless, we're talking, I think we do need to know, we're talking top of the food chain here. We do need to know what, because it would not be right to say 185 and then find out that somebody on the cabinet makes 186. So
go ahead, Melissa. I want to hear from you.
I just kind of want to say that when it comes to the salary, perception is everything. And I understand, Stanley and Carrie, you were kind of involved at the time that all of that stuff happened. It wouldn't have been a problem if people were happy with our superintendent. I don't think anybody would have batted an eye. So, but now we have to be very cautious about how we represent the position and what it means to the community. And so there's going to be a lot of thought, in my opinion, that has to go into deciding what that salary is going to look like, what kind of bennies are going to be added to that, and just knowing perception is everything, and that we have to be very cognizant. I think for the most part, except for the pandemic and everything that's going on with that, people are pretty happy with Tony. And I'm certain that when we get a new superintendent in here, people will find themselves to be happy with that decision too. But just reminding ourselves that the reason people were so focused on that salary was because they were so unhappy with the superintendent. So I think that those two things go hand in hand. There's going to be a lot of discussion.
But on top of that, I'll also say we're district top heavy. And the household average income in Orting is $70,000. That's not for an individual. That's their household average. And to tell them that a superintendent's going to make 3 times what the average Orting household made, that's a little hard for people to take.
I understand where you're coming from with that, George. And I know that there's been times I've felt that way myself when I look at people who make that kind of money. It seems extreme. But I would never take away skill, the dedication, the time, the effort to get to that level, to be able to do the job. Just because the surrounding people, the average income in the area is X amount of money. I'm not saying that this person is going to come into our district and be better than anybody else that's here, but you do have to acknowledge what it took to get them to that position to be able to apply. Otherwise, why wouldn't all of our community members want to take on the job?
Yeah.
Good point, Melissa.
Okay, go ahead. And Carrie, you're the last one on this. Go ahead.
I was just going to say the other piece that weighed into this is that we are just like we have a problem recruiting and retaining teachers because districts around us are paying handsomely. We have the same dilemma with like it's going to cost us to get somebody good in. We're not recruiting for OMAC. I think was one of the salaries that got thrown at us. You know, look, he's making OMAC, and I'm like, guys, that's OMAC. You're competing with other small districts around OMAC for that income level, and so we're up against other big districts that pay well. And we just have to, accept where we're at.
It's where we butt up against. You butt up against districts that has the tax base to do that. But the idea was to get people talking about this. We got to come up with a salary. So before they go out recruiting, they got to come up with something. So think about it. If you have any questions, feel free to email Bonnie or Lynn to get you any information you need.
Just as a takeaway, Lynn, can you give us like that ladder, that salary ladder we were talking about? So we know what range that we can be in?
Yes, and one of the things you may want to consider, you as a board have not had the chance to develop a salary philosophy. So in 2016, the board looked and said, much what you're talking about is that, are we going to lose staff to other districts, surrounding districts, because our salaries are not competitive? So if you're talking about a fair and competitive salary, that has to be defined. So is it at average of a certain select number of districts? Would it be the surrounding districts, or would it be districts of similar size? And then you have to consider, a small King County district may have a much higher cost of living than Orting, so maybe that's not a salary you want to compare it with. Do you want to have everything in the base salary, or do you want to consider perks that might act as an incentive or a reward for certification or a doctorate? So those are some things that you might want to wrestle with in your mind, and then have a discussion about what are the important elements that we want to do. And within ACT, obviously, whatever you do is going to be transparent to the community. And so, how do you want to package it? Because what the search team will do is present to the candidate, this is the compensation package. And once that happens, and you've all set your mind on it, there's not a whole lot of negotiation that goes on after the board has decided. So you've got to, what can the budget bear? What can the community accept? What is this board's philosophy about being fair and competitive to attract and retain the best candidates possible? So, you might want to just wrestle with some of those ideas, because when the community comes to you and says, well, you're paying this person all this money, based on what? How did you come up with that number? And it will, if you have a philosophy you've discussed or talking points that you've discussed, people will have the right to ask you, how did you decide, and how did you come up with this number? So those are some things you might want to consider before you set the salary range or package.
When we're talking about salary, this is kind of more from the business standpoint. School districts, notoriously, they do not raise salaries based on performance, correct? It's kind of a time, like you put in your years and you get your wage increase because of that.
Yeah.
Do these school districts ever reward for like increased test scores or something along those lines, where we could actually value the betterment of our district in a financial way to our superintendent?
Is your question, can we do that, or do other districts do it?
Both, I guess. I don't know if it's legal. I don't know if it's a standard operating for this.
Now we could put performance-based measures in the contract with the superintendent. We don't have to deal with union or any union considerations with the superintendent.
Superintendent, you can.
Whatever
teachers you cannot.
Because I'm not one that thinks that just because you've been in a job, just because I haven't fired you, means I should give you a raise every year. I believe if we sit down as a board and we say, you know what, this is going really well, the superintendent is doing well, then we could take a vote and give a raise. I'm very interested in performance-based compensation. You haven't screwed anything up so badly that you got to be fired, so now you go into the next pay cycle. I don't like that.
The concept used to be called merit pay, and now it's called performance-based pay or salary. And what you try and do when you build a salary with those components is making sure that it's measurable, that it, again, is not subjective. And so those are some of the kind of the tight things that you have to work. So whether it's test scores, would be one area. It can be sometimes, a tricky one that I'm is community perception. But that can be really tough because, the people generally who respond are the ones who are
Unhappy.
not real happy.
Mhm.
But I've seen that and it hasn't worked out very well. So you just have to be, what is it that you want to measure? And what is it that you want the superintendent to really pay attention to?
Well, I bring this up so we can start thinking about this because it's going to come up quick. So we can start thinking about what we want to pay the superintendent. And also when you put in the pay, you're going to put in how many people are going to apply for it. They're going to limit you to who's going to apply for that. So think about it. It's not something we're going to discuss anymore tonight. It will come up. Lynn will get us the information. Any other questions before we say goodbye? Nope. All right. You guys have a good night. Don't forget to vote. Bye-bye.
Already did it.
Bonnie, thank you.
Jack,
What's that? What's that, Kat? You said
already
something,
done.
Kat?
I said I already did it.
All righty. See
So
you
did
later.
I. Take care.
Well, on your county's website, you can check to see whether they've received it.
I did. Mine had been received.
See you.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.